G'day, darling.
We're on. Fuck yeah.
On.
Well,
We're back.
We're on. Back. It's Wormholes.
Non-live. It's your normal.
It's the normal.
It's your normal, but video, but non-live. Ridgy
Dig, just you and me. No one fucking around, screwing about. But we are bringing something to the family, the Wormholes family, that we've been meaning to for ages now.
Cheers. Show your socks. Get a foot up on the table.
Show my socks as well.
Get a foot up on the table.
How am I going to do
Let
that?
the people know.
All right, people.
There we go. The alien socks.
The alien socks as well. Look, you can even see them. It says, "Give me space."
Now,
give me that space, baby.
Here's me just looking like a fucking alien. I don't have any. I don't have any attire on. No mug, but just. You could imagine me in a Men in Black movie, right?
Yeah. Oh, fucking oath you could.
Big ginger
fucking
giant.
oath. Fucking oath. So yes, we're doing the aliens.
We're doing it.
Welcome
UFO,
to the Conspiratorium.
UFO.
What number Conspiratorium is this?
Conspiratorium number 4, I believe.
Shit.
4.
Only 4.
Yeah, no, we've been fairly tame.
Yeah, we have been fairly tame.
Don't worry, we're going to bring out episodes 5 to 10 next week.
Yeah, 5 to 10. It'll be fucking 6 episodes in 1 week.
So we're going to I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what you're in for here today, right? You've just sat down. You've seen that it's the UFO episode. You've probably smoked a joint. And you're thinking, what am I in for? All right. So tell them, give them a bit of a rundown of the itinerary of part 1, because we couldn't do this in one episode.
Nah,
this is going to be a two-parter.
This is definitely going to be a two-parter.
So let them know what they're in for today, my friend.
So we're going to start off talking about Operation Paperclip, because I've talked to a lot of people about this and they don't know about this.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads really well actually into our main topic for tonight, and that's Area 51 and S4.
Yep.
So yeah, the way it leads in is it will be super organic, and we'll also talk a little bit about the Diaglock, or the bell as well, the German bell.
Yep.
So where do we start, my friend? Where do we start? Do we go all the way back to World War II?
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we do.
We should. This is your forte. I'm going to let you run with Operation Paperclip and lay some knowledge on me, because I'm not myself really that familiar of it. Other than, and you can obviously explain this in a bit. I don't know if you mentioned it before when you were sort of telling me, but Operation Paperclip, there's also a byproduct of that, them bringing those the scientists in, also becomes NASA as well, correct?
Yes,
that's a part of it, as well as
So we'll go through that here. I need to have a look at my notes here, so that's why I'm looking down at the laptop. So just in case you're wondering why I'm looking down like a sad dog. So sad dog. So essentially, Operation Paperclip was something that came around the end of World War II, my bad.
Yep.
So roughly around like 44, it says, they were saying that near the end of the war there, the Allies like pushed a whole bunch of soldiers and scientists into Germany. It was a joint British and American task force called the CIOS, established in London in 44.
Yep.
So they went into some towns in Germany and essentially received or forcibly took these documents from a Polish lab technician containing a classified list of Third Reich top scientists, and they used that list to create a blacklist. So the idea of Operation Paperclip in general was for the Allies to steal these German scientists, bring them over to America, and essentially use their scientific knowledge to create their own versions of some of these things that they had missed about.
And so because this is the end of World War II, and at this point in time, they've already felt like there's a large chunk of the war that they've felt like they've been behind the 8 ball for,
Definitely.
So they're kind of wanting to prevent what they believe is either going to be continued conflict through to what we know to be the end of World War II. But at this point in time in 44, they're still trying to figure out how the fuck they're going to topple this superpower.
Yeah.
They're thinking this is an operation that we can undertake to try and get them, basically either take them out or bring them over to work for us, or we can interrogate them to get their ideas.
Well, interestingly enough, it was because the Soviets did the same thing.
Right.
And they did it first. So they were taking German scientists and relocate. I think they even actually relocated like laboratories themselves.
Yeah.
Like they deconstructed these laboratories and they took the scientists and they took it to Moscow.
Yeah.
And they started like researching it. So it's almost like the Americans like took that idea, but because they were on another continent, it was a lot harder for them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we'll continue down, right? So in the summer of 1945, the JIOA, Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, was created. So essentially, like they gained control of the rapidly expanding Nazi scientist program. Originally, it was called Operation Overcast, and then was renamed in 1945 to Paperclip.
Yeah.
So the operation came into public knowledge as well when the New York Times reported on Nazis living in America, which ended up causing like a massive like backlash.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was not Dwight Eisenhower. Who was the president that had a first lady who was very politically outspoken? I can't think of it right now. Maybe it was his wife, but she led massive protests against it, and obviously it didn't do a whole lot. But because they still ended up doing it.
Yeah.
You know, like, but yeah. So one of the main people that they managed to get their hands on was a guy called Verna Von Braun, who originally, like back in the day, was like one of the top researchers and developers of the V series rockets. Mm-hmm. So like I was saying to you earlier on, how there's like the V1 rocket, and then they eventually made like the V2 rocket, which was like at that point in time incapable of being shot down.
Yeah.
So like a lot of armies and a lot of civilians were also very scared of this device. I guess it was kind of like, you know, because they knew there was no defense against it.
Yeah.
You know. So, yeah, essentially over 1,600 scientists ended up coming to America. And
that is so insane when you think about it.
Oh, dude, isn't
How
it?
many people that is.
Yeah, dude, that's a lot of damn people, man.
Yeah.
Like, and these are all like the top of the top. And like, and the ones that survived too.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't assume that if you're a German, like you're a Nazi Third Reich scientist, I wouldn't assume that the American military would be carrying you away in pillows and giving you fairy floss as they're taking you away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's full on, but this Werner von Braun, right, ended up becoming the primary architect behind the US space program's Saturn V vehicle or rocket technology, which was like integral part of the moon mission in '69.
Yeah.
So a lot of like what we're saying here is like setting the scene almost. So essentially, when they had this operation and they were successful, and Werner von Braun and like a whole bunch of these other scientists came back, there was like a nuclear scientist as well, and there was like a biochemical scientist that also got taken, and he was, do you know sarin gas?
Yeah, I think I've heard of that before.
Yeah, he was the one who invented like the early version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
is that to do with the Agent Orange? Is that stuff as well?
I'm not too sure about Agent.
Isn't there a time between the Agent Orange stuff as well?
I'm not actually too sure about what Agent. I've heard of Agent Orange, but I don't know if that's the same as sarin gas.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought Agent Orange was mustard gas, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, but I'm not sure if there was a time between also that stuff happening around that time. We'll have to come back to that one.
Yeah, we're not too sure. But yeah, that essentially just like gives an idea of Operation Paperclip, because there's not much about it.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like actual details.
Yeah.
Right. So where we wanted to go next with this was talking about these German scientists and what they were developing before this. And this is where, you know, like the whole alien and like, you know, secret technology aspect comes in. So they were supposedly developing, right, this essentially a UFO. It was a bell-shaped UFO that ended up being called the Diaglock. Now, it still like remains a mystery in terms of like public disclosure and whatnot, but it was created in the later stages of the Second World War between 43 and 45. So around about the same time that Paperclip was like happening as well, in a secret Nazi base known as Der Ries. I think I'm saying that right. A lot of these names I'm probably going to fuck up. An ultra-secret experiment base located between the Owl Mountains and the Kaziz Castle. So the base consisted of 7 laboratories hidden under mountains. The base was supposedly built by forced labor, supervised by men from the SS.
Yeah.
So anyway, this Diaglock Bell, man, I wish I could actually get a photo up of it, like a little rendition of it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll like try and superimpose one over.
Yeah. Yep.
This bell was made of an especially heavy metal and was chained to the ground. It measured 5 meters high by 3 meters in diameter. So it was like decent size.
Yeah.
It wasn't ridiculous, but decent size. On the front was the Nazi symbol and had 2 rotating cylinders that contained a substance similar to mercury called Xerum 525. So XERUM 525.
Yeah.
Now, I'd actually, before doing the research for this episode, I'd actually heard about mercury being spun with an electromagnetic pulse from other whistleblowers that don't mention anything about the Diaglock. So it's very interesting that, like, you know, I don't think they'd be doing it nowadays, but back then that was the way, you know.
Yeah.
So I was saying that this liquid was extremely radioactive, and many of the scientists who worked in the bell while it was on died of cancer. So when it turned the opposite direction, it gave off a violet glow.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing with mercury, isn't it? So, like, obviously, people die of mercury poisoning.
Yeah.
So, if you're trying to use that as a way to create some sort of, like, energy, you're running a massive risk.
Yeah, there's going to be some crazy ass shit, definitely. Saying the exterior of the artifact was lined with a ceramic material, which interestingly was the same material that ended up being on the Columbus spaceship for NASA.
Yeah, right.
So this is where a lot of this shit kind of ties in where I wanted to start with Paperclip and just give it an idea. So the ceramic tiles that acted as the thermal insulator were in the original plans for the bell were actually lost and destroyed in 1945. So the ultra-secret project of the Nazi bell was commanded by SS General Hans Kammler, a scientific engineer who was involved in the development of the V2 missiles as well.
Yeah.
So as you can start to see now, Verna Von Braun, who ended up being taken and becoming the head of NASA, worked with this dude on the Diaglock.
Yeah.
And this is where it says General Kammler or the Nazi campaign, some theories say the bell was moved in a cargo plane, stopping in Barcelona, Spain, towards the South American cone between Chile and Argentina. So when after all the end of this, it was moved, and I have also heard that the Nazis weren't defeated, and they were moved to Argentina, and then from Argentina to Antarctica.
Yeah.
But that's something that we'll touch on in another part of this, where we talk about modern day times, because there's actually a bit of information from whistleblowers about Antarctica and the Nazi bases on Antarctica.
Yeah. So
we'll look back to that on another episode for sure. But yeah, so it seems that the real Nazi campaign was they were trying to make it a time machine.
Yeah.
So they not only were they trying to make like an anti-gravitic weapon, but like they were trying to make a time machine to make small air movements at the same time as rotating propellers. As it was rotating its propellers. So, man, there's so much secrecy about this kind of stuff. But on December 1965, this is a separate incident, December 9th, an unknown flying object, acorn or bell-shaped, crashed in the vicinity of the U.S. town Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. This event was known in the study of ufology as the case of Kecksburg. The artifact had strange inscriptions like the Nazi bell and was quickly recovered by military forces.
Because of course.
They're not going to let anything like this. Many witnesses saw the strange event. Everything suggests that the UFO of Kecksburg was the result of development of the Nazi campaign project. With the most probable hypothesis is that both Hans Kammler and the Nazi campaign ended up in the secret bases of the US government, protected by utmost security. And this is where we lead into Area 51.
Yeah. So just to jump back quickly, one of the things that's important to note if you're kind of confused with what we're saying so far is that so this ship was in development even like back in the late 1930s, this Bell ship, wasn't it? Like they were working on that.
Yeah, they were working on it for a while. They were working on it in tandem, I guess, when they were working on these V2 missiles.
Yeah. So if you think about the fact that, again, we still don't have any knowledge of a way that they can harness mercury to be able to create this kind of machine, because that's one of the things, is that this ship wasn't just like a plane, or it was, the people, they were working on something that was moving in ways that weren't known to any sort of shuttle. So the way that ties into the alien thing is what you'll hear throughout a lot of this episode and the next episode, is that there seems to be this overarching thing where either they have recovered ancient technology and they've been able to reverse engineer certain aspects of it, that we've had crashes in the 18th century through to now that have ended up being recovered, and they've been able to work on some. That's like the common theme of most stories or whatever of whistleblowers on it, is that seems to be what's happened, is that ships have been either recovered or crashed or landed or whatever it is, and that we're starting to make some sort of advancements with technology based on what they were found. Uncover. So
a lot of what they ended up finding in Roswell, just on that fact, ended up being fiber optics and Bluetooth.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, like how they were like, let's reverse this technology and see what we can get from it. They might not be able to actually get, whatever it is, because the language is going to be different. The materials, it might be stuff that we can't access on Earth. But they still obviously have managed a way to make it work.
Yeah. So, and obviously, when we get into the Bob Lazar stuff at the end, a lot of what he talks about is how many people have died trying to, they've taken sledgehammers to things and trying to break them open or whatever, and ended up killing themselves. There's so much of that when you're mucking around with something that you don't understand how it works, and your job is to try and find out how it works. There's a lot of casualties, and so taking it back to the paperclip stuff, that's this trying to fuck with mercury. They obviously had something that they could see behaved in that way, and a lot of that is that you might think it'll look like something that we know of in our, say, periodic table, but it will behave in a way that we've never seen before. So then they'll try and replicate it with what seems to be the same, physics makeup of it, but they'll be creating a really volatile, really dangerous version of whatever this thing is that's made it perfect and, completely combustion free and heat free and all of those things. So that seems to be where the scientific thing comes from. So I just wanted to sort of mention that, so when people are going why are we talking about this ship in particular, it's because there's a theme throughout it where there seems to be these ships or these things that are talked about that happen to have this ability that they're trying to then turn that into stuff, and some that seems to be, like you said, with Bluetooth and fiber optics that we actually have now had today.
Exactly right.
That, I don't understand how the fuck it works. And
Neither
it did
do
sort
I.
of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it didn't it? Especially Bluetooth, man.
Yeah.
That really kind of came out of nowhere, and I still don't really understand how they're sending this information.
Infrared before that. How quickly did we go from no wireless transmission stuff to whatever to infrared to Bluetooth and then now to Wi-Fi? They were very quick in terms of what we had before. Everything had to be physical cable connections. And even that, even think about how we transmit data over fiber optics and all that. That's all.
Well, that's exactly where it's leading
strange.
next. I've heard about the next step is transmitting data through light, called Li-Fi.
Which
essentially is going to be if you've got a house light or anything, that light there, or that light, those light particles can transmit data to a receiver. So it's going to be you're going to be able to essentially send the information over the rays of the sun. So you're going to be able to basically get internet everywhere and anywhere there's light,
which is just crazy to think of. And stuff will transfer up to, not necessarily, but it could be up to the speed of light, which is
exactly right. Which is quick enough for me, you know what I mean?
I think that might do the job. That might do the job, NBN. All right, so let's get into, obviously, everyone kind of knows what the idea of Area 51 is, so I haven't gotten too much on everything. We're going to come back and talk a lot more about the stuff that apparently has happened in Area 51, like the Bob Lazar thing, which I know is something that a lot of people are familiar around. But obviously, Area 51 is located in the desert of Nevada. The spot now known as Area 51, that it was a location that was already being used for military testing. So obviously there's been nuke testing out there. So the reason it's called Area 51 is because there's basically a military base that's divided up into all of these areas. And Area 51 is sort of up the top right-hand corner of those. So not as adjacent as everything else that was already there, but, close enough that they've called it Area 51. And so, there's been a lot of stuff that that was happening there in terms of military testing, bomb testing, all of that kind of stuff, but still so little has actually ever been classified, declassified or made public. It's all been very under the rug for
except
a long
for
time.
whistleblowers. Basically, like it's the only thing. They're just not admitting it. They're not coming out.
They only confirmed that Area 51 existed in 2013.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we go back to the history of it, right, think about how in 1954, President Eisenhower, so it must have been, if you're thinking of the 40s, it had to have been
someone before him. Yeah, we don't have
and then director of CIA, then director of the CIA, Alan Dulles, authorizes Richard Bissell to lead a top secret development of high altitude aircraft dubbed Project Aquatone. So in the summer of 1955, so a year later, many UFO sightings were reported around Area 51.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that everything that they've talked about for Area 51 in terms of like, and what they came out with officially in 2013. So this stuff's been happening for 70 years. And what they came out in 2013 and admitted was this project from 1954, saying, no, all we've ever done is do spy plane things, such as this U-2 plane that we developed.
Yeah.
You're telling me that in 2013, you're coming out and being like, oh yeah, we were doing these things back in the 50s. Fill the blanks in of the fucking next 60 years and wonder what the fuck they've been doing there since then.
Yeah.
And they've just kind of sedated us by being like, oh, well, yeah, no, we'll admit that it's a place and we were doing some like high altitude plane testing. There's a couple of the other news ships I think they came out.
Yeah, they came out and said that the Blackbird, was it the S2 Blackbird was developed there?
Yeah.
Now that is a cool like feat. But I think on a previous podcast I've talked about the TR-3B, the patent for the TR-3B that was like semi-recently released.
Yep.
And how it's like essentially a black floating triangle.
Yeah.
Now, like whether they actually have the anti-gravitic technology in this public version of the, TR-3B or not, isn't the case. Is like a lot of people have seen black floating triangles. It's a very common thing, especially around military bases.
Yep.
So there's no way that the only thing that they developed with these German scientists that were working on the Diaglock, like we were saying before, there's no way that the only thing they developed, right, was a fucking jet that ran on conventional methanol fuel. There's no way, bro.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And, when there's so much of it being tied into this whole, we can't let information get out that other nations can find out about. That's why they kill so many people that have worked on these things. They keep so much of it under the rug because they need to make sure that they're protecting the information as well as trying to advance.
Yeah.
So like, on that merit alone, they would be so many light years in front of where we know they are. And that information is being kept under such lock and key because that falling into the wrong hands could be the end of your country.
Well, a lot of these whistleblowers are saying that, like back in a lot of this technology was starting to be reverse engineered and discovered in the 30s and whatnot. Yeah. And what's coming out now, or like what was coming out then, in the early 90s, like we were saying before with infrared and whatnot, that was what they would have been discovering.
Yeah. In that time.
Absolutely. So imagine now, they'd probably be like 1,000 years ahead of what we're talking about, like Li-Fi. Yep. There'd probably be something that they can transmit data through just the fucking ether of space and time, mate. You know what I mean? Like it's just... Yeah.
And that's exactly right. Like, and we get further along this, you'll start to understand like some of the things that people have reported as being, what they were witnessing at that time in the 80s and whatever. So... the reason why I wanted to start with Area 51 and then go back to Roswell was one of the biggest, I guess, known alien encounter type things, is because that story becomes hilarious of like, oh, Area 51 was only founded at this time, and it was only ever to do military testing, and the UFOs that people were seeing were because of these planes that we had that could fly at 66,000 feet, whereas general planes were flying at 10,000 and our jets were fighting at 40,000. That's all there is to it, case fucking closed. And coming out and saying that even as recently as 2013 is that when you go back and look at what happened at Roswell, which was in 1947, so it fills that timeline now. We started at World War II. we went to 1954, and so we've jumped from sort of like, 45, 46 to 54.
Yeah.
Now we're going back and looking at what was happening in 47. So in 1947, there was an incredibly large wave of UFO sightings. In the last 6 months of 1947 alone, there were 300 claims of UFO sightings.
So that's pretty nuts. That's like 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah.
Like UFO sightings a day in that hyper-focused area.
Yep. Among these is the infamous Roswell Incident, in which the one thing that everyone agrees on, so skeptic or whatever, is that something did crash, right?
Yeah.
So there's no argument that there was never a crash, it was planted. There was definitely a crash. It's just about what was discovered that is still debated. So sometime before June 14th in 1947, a crash occurred on Foster Ranch, and the local rancher Mac Brazel visits the crash site. Mac Brazel takes some of the debris from what he's found that's crashed to local Sheriff George Wilcox, who then contacts Colonel Butch Blanchard from the US Air Force. Now, again, obviously it looks weird if you're going and taking it to the sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
Like if it's something that you can clearly identify quite easily as just part of a plane, or what we'll get to in a minute, a fucking weather balloon.
Yeah.
You're just going to be like, oh, that's interesting, and fucking leave
Throw it in the
alone.
bin. Yeah, exactly right.
But you've taken some of the debris straight to the local sheriff, and that local sheriff has then contacted the Air Force straight away.
Yeah.
So you've already got 2 people that are clearly reacting to something interesting, right? Then Blanchard, so the US Air Force then gets contacted, and then Blanchard alerts his superior, General Roger Ramey.
Yeah, Ramey looks right.
Ramey, who then tasks Jesse Marcel, who's an intelligence officer, to assess the crash site and recover more of the material.
Yeah. So if that was you, who hypothetical question here, if that was your backyard, right, and someone had crashed in it, would you hand in the evidence to the police?
Not now.
Not now.
Again, you're talking about 1947 when people are so fucking oblivious to the corruption that exists, because there's just
a lot more authoritarian.
No age of information. You think you're doing the right thing by approaching those people. There's no argument that. Think about how many times you hear like, well, why don't you go to the police? Like that's just the thing that everyone says to everything that's ever happened ever. It's like, why don't you go to the police? That's just so ingrained.
What would you do then if you found this like material that was super hard but super light, and then who knows? Like if you found a body even in that. What would you do?
I think me personally, I would approach people closest to me to be able to inspect it and get their opinion on it myself before anyone of any sort of authoritarian. So
get enough video.
Something drops into my backyard, I'm calling you and all my mates that would be interested in it to start with.
Yeah.
And saying, come have a look at this thing that I found. It's otherworldly.
Yeah.
And we all agree. We all take fucking ridiculous amounts of photos, back it up onto fucking hard drives, do all of that,
onto clouds,
and then try and go fucking public, so that when they try and stomp the narrative out, you've got 100 people that have witnessed it, taken their own videos, backed that up on their own heart. Like that's the only way you can do it these days, where the information and the people and the testimonies all outweigh whatever narrative that a mainstream can possibly spin on it.
Yeah.
And we're in a time now where that's possible.
Oh, yeah.
It was never possible back then. They could just squash this shit.
Yeah, because they didn't have GoPros, they could run outside and take videos of it. And phones, they could just upload to the cloud and not be able to delete it. Like
to take a little quick side step away from this into one of my favorite things of 9/11 about exactly what we're talking about. One of the theories that surrounds 9/11, and there is evidence to support it, is that they held off, and talking about technology suppression, they held off the release of camera phones in the US until after 9/11.
Really?
And if you actually research
I didn't know
you'll
that.
find
that
the first camera phone did not get released until after 9/11.
Okay.
Because imagine if everyone had a fucking camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
So 2001 and there was already, they had them in Japan and they had them in China and whatever.
Yep.
But the actual full, they go hammer and tong into this, and you remember what it was like.
Oh, of course.
When they released camera phones, like it was a fucking massive campaign about how amazing these things are. Throw your digital cameras away and just carry this fucking shitty thing with you. It was massive. So apparently they held off on that until after 9/11. So if you hold the belief that 9/11 was fishy, that makes it even fucking fishier. Because think about it. All the videos that you see are the same ones that the news showed you over and over again. It's so hard to find something that gives you a different angle or perspective.
Yeah.
Even Tower 7 collapsing, it's the same one. It's only those couple that came from this chosen fucking CCTV that happened to be pointing at it. Like, there's no one giving you their own vision.
Yeah.
So, again, if they've got the ability to control that technology suppression to make sure that this thing goes off without a hitch, they can't do that now. A 9/11... If you believe in the conspiracy of it, they couldn't do it in today's society.
It'd be so much harder.
Because you cannot stop the 1 point whatever million people that are on, surrounding that area where it's going down.
Yeah.
Every single building looking at that building has a video of it.
Exactly right. Almost every single person in that building has a camera.
I mean, even think about all the mass shootings that they've tried to do, like the whole. Document, they all seem different than what we'd seen in the past, like where they've got someone with a body camera that's going in and doing this fucking shooting or whatever, because they're trying to make it so that it's not something that someone else can record because you're getting the real deal first-hand footage. So they're trying to get ahead of it and be like, well, what's more authentic than someone with a GoPro shooting people?
Yeah, exactly right.
So it's like, you getting someone else showing a video of them running into the building doesn't seem as impressive.
Yeah.
Because this dude's fucking giving you the first-hand footage. So it's kind of like that whole thing
they're playing on it now. They suppressed it for ages and then now they're playing on it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, they're going, all right, well, let's make it so immersive that you don't want to look for other videos. You just want to watch this unbelievable thing unfold in what looks like a first-person fucking shooter game.
It's fucking ridiculous. But
so
going back to Roswell.
Tangent.
Yeah, that's good though. That's good. So we're up to Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer. So on July 8th, about 3 weeks later, Colonel Blanchard orders Walter Hort, the public information officer, to release a press statement stating that they found what they believed to be a crashed flying saucer. So essentially, they're saying. They came out and said, the headline read, the RAAF captures flying saucer on a ranch in Roswell region.
Yeah, so posted it as a newspaper that they had found a flying saucer, which again, it's the UFO has come to have many names, but that was probably its first iteration of what they used to call them back in those days. Whenever someone witnessed it, it became flying saucer first, then probably UFO, then now they call it UAP.
Yeah, I don't like the unidentified aerial phenomenon. Yeah, because that could you could call the Northern Lights that.
That's exactly what I was just thinking.
You know what I mean? They're trying to take away the mysticism of it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, because UFO is always unidentified flying object is already kind of weird, but again, it's become cool and mysterious.
Yeah,
so they're
exactly
trying to make it take it away from that, and I guess also in part trying to make it less attached to crazy people. I understand that because some people have been like, "Oh my god, I've been abducted," and fucking, and it gets kind of weird. But But keep going anyway from the headline.
Yeah. So on the same day. The RAF then changes their statement, and General Roger Ramey orders that the crash remains are now taken to Fort Worth, Texas. They issue another press release with the correction, it was just a weather balloon. Now, surely everyone's heard that before. They've heard that statement when people go, nah, it's been debunked, it was just a weather balloon. So that would have been tying back into what we said with the Project Aquatone, the high-flying vehicles. They're probably going, no, this is just Project Aquatone. Yep. These are just weather balloon, high-altitude, things.
Yeah.
And it's not a crash.
Yep.
Which... This rancher saw it with his own eyes, and so did the guy who owns the property too. Mm-hmm. And they would have been silent. They would have been like, you speak about it, you're getting killed,
And that's what he does. The witness comes out that same day and goes, oh, yeah, it was just basically sticks and tape and foil. If that was the case, why the fuck did you run straight to the sheriff?
Yeah.
Why did the sheriff run straight to the Air Force? And why did the Air Force get his guy out there fucking immediately?
If it sticks and fucking stones,
for all of them to then say flying saucer.
Yeah.
Which, again, anything like that, and it doesn't matter what time of the world you're in, you've got a reputation at risk. And if you didn't, why would they come out and denounce it immediately, right? So they obviously said it with just as much conviction that that's what they found, as much as they came out with the same level of conviction to say it was a weather balloon.
Yeah.
why would you?
Exactly right.
Would
Why
you
would you
even risk it
yeah.
unless you thought, holy shit, we found something. You didn't realize that whatever invisible hand you weren't aware existed.
Yeah.
We're going to come out, and because the Air Force is split up into so many divisions. So
100%.
Us who believe of the shadow government and whatever that is, the puppeteer to all of those. If that exists as we believe it does, this Air Force person has come out with conviction, not aware of what's actually controlling all of them, and gone, we found a fucking flying saucer, and then something's come in and been like, you need to retract that immediately. Because they know some shit.
Oh yeah, because they probably would have possibly could have even been technology that they were developing, bro.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, you think, so you look at the timeline, you've talked about like the 1939 through to 44, 45, they already know about this bell that the Germans have been working on, and these scientists have been captured and brought over to America, and they're already doing this work. And then Roswell crash happens in 1947, 2 years later. So there's a very good chance that this is part of a project that they're fucking working on that's gone south and crashed or whatever it is. So they need to get on. But this Air Force fucking person in Roswell, New Mexico, isn't going to know what's happening already at Area 51 with these Nazi fucking doctors. So he's going, we found a fucking flying saucer. Then all of a sudden the big hush has come down and gone, we don't fucking talk about that
Swinging
shit.
the big
it's a
dick
weather
of
balloon.
fucking silence, mate.
Yeah. Crazy to think of.
So the case remains speculation and a conspiracy theory. I think we've talked about where conspiracy theory came from in one of the earlier ones, but like a CIA term that they essentially pushed through social engineering to discredit and demonize and ridicule. So obviously the newspaper were going to be like, it's a conspiracy theory. But until 1978, when Stanton Friedman, a physicist and UFO researcher, interviews none other than Jesse Marcel himself, the man who was sent by the General Roger Ramey to inspect it.
So in his interview, he says he still believes that it was definitely not a weather balloon. So this is, so just to remind you, so we're talking from 1947 to 1978. So he's now well and truly retired.
Yeah, this is now 1978,
Yeah, so you're looking at 31 years in the future. So in that interview, he says he still believes that it was definitely not a weather balloon. And most interestingly, when he talked about the metal or the material found at the crash, he said, and I quote, "It felt like you had nothing in your hands. It wasn't any thicker than the foil out of a pack of cigarettes, but the thing that got me is that you couldn't even bend it. You couldn't dent it, and even a sledgehammer would bounce off it." So think about like our aluminium foil, which is, again, that you would pull out a sheet of that, or someone would give you a sheet of that, and you couldn't bend it, you couldn't fold it.
It would freak you the fuck out.
And you could hit hit it and it wouldn't crumple or whatever. That's insane to think of.
Man. And to think it's that light as well.
Yep. He goes on to say, "It was not anything from this earth, that I am sure of." And he explains that he has been an intelligence officer in the RAF for many years and knows all the types of material we have available to build or had available to build crafts with. So then Stanton then goes on to interview all the aforementioned people. So Colonel Blanchard, George Wilcox, and Mark Brazel, the original witness, and Walter Haut, who's the guy who released the press release, and then went on to announce himself that Roswell was a massive cover-up and called it a cosmic Watergate.
So it was almost like they came out and they had interviewed these people, and then once again, the big dick of silence has come down and been like, if you don't try and explain this in a way that will keep the conspiracy theorists at bay, we're going to have a problem. And
that's what they did after that all came out, over even as recently as the last 20 or 30 years. They've done continuous CIA declassified reports where the report ends up saying it was a weather balloon. Every single time they're like, we've done this, we've researched that, we've done this, it was a weather balloon. But what is interesting about it is that these people who have come out later all have very similar corroborating stories around what the material was like. One of them says something slightly different in that the material could be scrunched, but then as soon as you let go of it would snap back to its original form of that metal that you couldn't actually dent or damage. You couldn't damage it by doing it, and it would almost like, think of fucking the Terminator 2 guy where like
the liquid guy,
the thing where he just like goes back to his shape, that it was kind of like that. And the other interesting thing is that quite a few of the witnesses or the people that investigated and then got interviewed later said about the bodies that got found, which isn't something that's talked about. They said that they actually found alien bodies at the crash site. They all said what we know to be the story that we hear from nearly every person of like 4 foot tall, giant head and grey.
Yeah, greys,
all of them corroborated that same thing, right?
And there's a lot of people that have had first-hand experience or abductions with aliens that quite often also cite the greys as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very common. It's almost like, this would be, you know what I mean? Like this would be a grey, I guess, if it was grey. Like the big eyes, no nose, just a small mouth, kind of like big head, little body kind of thing. There's that many, pictures and drawings and, idealized of the greys. There would have to be some sort of truth behind it.
Yeah.
A lot of these insiders also say that there's tall greys as well.
Yep.
So they look like they're like our height or taller.
Yeah.
And they still have big eyes and whatnot, but they're just tall.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different whistleblowers talking about different types of aliens. A lot of the high technology advanced races look like us.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like I heard this fact from like one of these whistleblower videos, a couple of years ago when I was like going deep into a lot of these. They were saying that, there's X amount of millions of aliens that walk among us, every day. And they come down here, and quite often they're just down here to analyze us.
Yeah.
And just to see how our society works and stuff like that. And they just look like us. Like you wouldn't really know.
Yeah.
What, like you would just think they're a person. And there's this one guy was like, there's probably a very strong chance that everybody in the world at some point has had a face-to-face conversation with an ET.
Yeah. Well, there's even the other side of that theory that is like, that I've seen some people talk about in that, like, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but we know that there's a realm of there's our vision only has a certain range, our hearing only has a certain range. So there's also a belief that these people are able to manipulate that, and like a dog whistle that we can't hear, they can make themselves completely unaware that they're in our vicinity, and that they even go on to say like this is what could be attributed to everyone's like ghost type stuff.
Yeah.
Is that these are actually, the experiences that they're having are with like aliens or these creatures or these beings that are able to move between the realms of what we can see and hear and what we can't. So like we're seeing a glitch of that part of their control over those, frequencies.
Definitely. Because essentially it's just a vibration. Like everything within the electromagnetic spectrum is a different vibration, and all colors are obviously different and whatnot. And, sound is its own thing too. So just like we can control, our hearing to a very crazy degree, or we like human beings have our own certain abilities, like when we get cut we regenerate or whatever. These people, these non-terrestrials, might also have the ability to control their vibration, essentially, so they can vibrate faster than what we can see, which means it kind of would like phase out of reality.
That's something that I probably would entertain the idea of even more than go in that sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
Knowing like something as simple as I can't hear a dog whistle, it makes sense to me that these things could exist in a frequency that I can't see or hear. That there's a spirit inhabiting our plane. You know what I mean? Like that.
There's something about ghosts that I've just never quite gelled with. Hey, like, I'm not saying that they don't exist. Like I've personally never had like first-hand experience with ghosts, so I wouldn't like really have any kind of like knowledge about it. But there's something about that lingering spirit, what would you even call it, idea or whatever. Yeah. The lingering spirit, fact that doesn't really gel with me. Yeah. Like I think it would have to be something that is from a different dimension or something like that.
And that's where that ties in. If that was the same, like that's the same thing. If that aliens and even spirits like can exist in that's the way that I buy into everything, is that there is that whole alternate reality, alternate universe, like kind of stuff where it's like these things exist in a different format, but there's crossover between the two realms, whether it's aliens being able to hide themselves or spirits still lingering after because, their physical body still was here, but now they've entered a different, frequency of existence. Yeah. And that makes sense to me that could be the way. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That could be the way that it crosses over. I mean, because it has to be something there. There has to be something for people that have, as we've even talked about, this connection that we have to everything, whether it's nature, whether it's other humans. I believe that, people have these genuine psychic connections with something. I don't understand what it is or how it works, but there's enough evidence to support that some people can feel something in a way that other people can't.
Oh,
just like when we talk about,
it's like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, fucking, what's the other one? Well, it's like precognition, where you can see the future, and anything psychic like that. That's where a lot of people dismiss it because they've never experienced it. Yep. When I was a kid, I experienced like a very vivid case of precognition. I had a dream, and then I was like, that was a really weird dream. I was running up this ramp at school, right? You know how when you have deja vu?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shit, that's deja vu. This was deja vu, but on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
It was like, I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fucking super weird, man. And then I've also astral projected before, but that's for another time as well.
Yeah, of course.
That scared the shit out of me, man.
Yeah.
That really scared me because I was awake, but I wasn't in my body.
Yeah, and I've had heaps of people that have told me experiences of that. So I guess the point of all of that is that there's a lot of ways that they could be around us and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah.
And that would make sense given, that we do believe in these kinds of things on a general level. Why wouldn't that if we can believe in ghosts and we can believe in clairvoyance, so we can believe in these things, why couldn't these aliens be able to manipulate that in the ability to just walk amongst us as well,
exactly,
or shapeshift, or any of those fucking things that could definitely be possible. So
100%. So what's the deal? Are we going to talk about Bob Lazar this time, or are we? No,
I reckon we'll save that.
We'll save that.
I want to talk a lot about that, as I think that's the most notable example.
Cool. All right.
So the last couple of points of this were just that he explained that they covered up the knowledge of the craft, the materials used, and even uncovering alien bodies. So that's circling back. One of the crazy things is that a lot of the witnesses, which are from all walks of life right up to military intelligence, recount the same kind of thing about bodies being found, of tiny grey aliens with the massive heads, and the same thing we hear from different people in different events and time again. So that was basically what we talked about already. But that's... If you look at any of these things isolated, so you look at, the Nazi scientists coming over, it's like we talk about all the time. You got to look at that, draw that line between all of them, like how they talk about, we were working on reverse engineering. we found these, we've communicated with these grey things with tiny heads, that with these like elasticy bodies, because they don't need to actually do anything because they all communicate with their brains. That's why their brains are fucking massive. Those things tie into a lot of these stories that go over nearly a century. You're talking as I said, early 20s and 30s right through to now, and these are the same things that are popping up, these same themes. There has to be something there.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
For it to just be weather balloons and fucking... high altitude aircrafts.
Yeah, it's just at the point now where we have so much technology and we know that this isn't like what I feel like we've been almost like somewhat bottlenecked, like of the last maybe 5 years. Think about the acceleration growth in the 90s compared to let's compare 1998 to 2004 or whatever, or 2003 or whatever. That gap there was huge.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like 2015, 2020. Hasn't really been that huge.
No, that's right.
And I feel like because they know that people aren't falling for the shit anymore, they've started to really bottleneck it. They've started to really go, all right, well, they obviously know that there's so much more to this world. Talking about free energy devices, talking about, holograms and Project Bluebeam, which we'll go into another time, which is super realistic holograms.
Yeah.
Also, another theory about 9/11 is that it was a Project Bluebeam thing. There was no planes that ended up hitting it at all.
Yep.
It was a Bluebeam that was doing this hologram on it, and then they had the bombs in there that exploded.
Yep.
So we won't go into that too far now, but I think we'll wrap this one up here, and then for the next episode, we will be going into Bob Lazar, deep into Bob Lazar, because his testimony is super interesting.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't mind while we're doing that, then bringing it a little bit further and do a bit of research into a guy called William Tompkins. Mm-hmm. He was a researcher at Boeing, I think it was, or McDonnell Douglas, one of those two.
Yeah.
And his testimony is really interesting, man. I think he goes into talking about ships that were sent in.
Yeah, right.
And stuff like that.
Yep.
So I think, don't quote me on it, but I think. But either way, I know that I listened to it before and it was super interesting. So I think this time we've really given the people a solid base to go, all right, sweet. So this is kind of where we can set a start. Obviously, it could have started before Operation Paperclip.
That's the
we
stuff
never know.
That is documented to a degree that's worth bringing to you with any kind of...
Because we didn't want to just... We've said this multiple times. We didn't want to just come on here and just spout random facts. And like, we wanted to try and tie it together in a way that people could follow.
Yeah.
So what we'll do next time is we'll talk about Bob Lazar. We'll talk about the ancient astronaut theory.
Yeah.
As well, because that really throws it back. Like that talks about like the pineal gland and like all these ancient religions and all the scriptures in ancient Egypt and, you know, the people that they were, or the people they worshipped and whatnot. And then we'll also talk about William Tompkins, because he only passed away in like 2016 or 2017.
Yeah, he was one of the one that did a fair bit of deathbed. Like,
yeah, man. Yeah,
stuff,
he did. He did. And there's a bit of like YouTube content out there about it. So we'll be able to link people up and bring them facts on here, and then they can go take it away and go look at it themselves. So
yeah, have you ever seen anything weird or interesting?
No, I've had vivid dreams, but no, I wish I could say that I'd seen a UFO. I really do, man. Yeah, I'm obsessed with aliens, bro. I got an alien tattooed on my arm, but like,
yeah. Well, my mum said she's seen weird things over KI, and KI would be a place that the sky is so clear that you're going to see something over there, and it's still close enough to mainland and whatever else that, like, you know, if anything was coming over. But yeah, you know, heaps of people there's some really interesting abduction stories that seem to have a fair bit of merit. That, you know, what was one of the ones I was listening to recently, one of the most compelling ones, where the guy literally did go missing for 5 days. They were out like a massive group of lumberjacks. They all got a polygraph test, and all of them passed or inconclusive the polygraph test, but none of them seemed like they were convincingly lying. It was all either that they were telling the truth about their experience. And the weirdest thing about it is that where this guy told his story, they went back and did some research later and found that all the trees and everything had like fiber, like their growth levels went up by like 500% or something. Don't quote me on the amount, but basically there was clearly evidence that something had disturbed the very nature of the environment surrounding where this abduction apparently happened. Yeah. So you look at those three things as a story, that the dude actually went missing and that they started questioning his friends about his disappearance, that the polygraph test for all 5 of them, so it meant that they all were supporting his craziness as well. You know? So it wasn't exactly like that. They weren't just like, he's a fucking kook. They were all saying like, he went missing. Like, we saw this light, he went missing. Yeah. And that he did actually physically go missing. And that, where it had happened, the actual makeup and what they understand about, you know, the rate of trees growth or whatever it was, the wood fibers or something, turned into something astronomical that they hadn't seen before. Yeah. It's a very fucking interesting abduction story with when those 3 things add up together. So there's heaps of that kind of stuff, man. Like,
there really is. And if anybody out there listening here has had a first-hand experience, I would love to hear it. If anybody listening wants to email through, or if anyone was involved in any government programs, I don't know how many fucking government secret scientists are listening to Wormholes podcast, but like, you never know, man. Yeah. And if you are and you feel like that you want to talk about it, we would love to hear it. We would love to hear it.
And even more so, just what are the ones that, you know, a lot of people have watched documentaries or they think. We know that Bob Lazar was a big one, and that's why we're going to dedicate a fair bit of time to him in the next episode. But if you've just got your favorite story, abduction story or whatever, hit us with the links. Yeah. And even if we do part 2, which we've already got sort of mapped out, but then come back for a part 3 of everyone's choice of the things that they want to... I know, I'll shout out to Pagey, and I haven't had a chance to really look at it yet, but he wants me to look into... Because one of the documentaries that I was listening to are about how all of these exonerated or retired scientists who have basically had their work stopped or crumpled or prevented have now gone and joined the... What's it called? But Tom DeLonge's space.
Oh, yeah, to the Stars Project.
To the Stars Project. So as much as it's weird to have the face of it be fucking Tom DeLonge, don't waste your time on me, you're already...
Yeah, exactly right. Nobody likes you when you're 23. But yeah.
A fucking alien abducted me. But under that face is a lot of these former, whether it's engineers or scientists or Air Force generals or Navy generals that have like seen things, had it squashed, and now are trying to find a way to get this information. So, Paige, I know that you wanted me to get stuck into that. I'll make sure I do that and bring a little bit about where that's at, because the next episode we gave you the beginning, and now we want to try and bring you from the whole Fravor thing. Not Fravor. We will talk about David Fravor. Yeah, definitely. Bob Lazar. That's 90s.
Yeah.
You know, so we're talking another 40 years in front of where we're talking about now.
Exactly right.
Yeah, the shit that he talks about correlates with Roswell back in 1930 now. So 50 years worth of a difference between them. And yet we're still talking about the same kind of, you know, ships and the same kind of beings. There's
and the same secrecy is still surrounding it. So at the end of the day, if they just come out, they keep saying that us as a species, we're not ready, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. If you're not ready to have the expanded consciousness or the idea that there's an intelligent species out there other than us, if you're not ready for that idea, you need to do some spiritual work.
Yeah.
You really do. Because we're so far beyond thinking we're the only ones out there. You have to be, man. Come on.
Yeah. And I think, it's a very strange reason. One of the theories that they have is like, but as soon as we know, then the test is over and they just blow us up. All right, well, fucking blow us. Let us have that. Like, that's it. If that's going to be the end thing, then we're living for this weird abnormal purpose anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Waiting for that to happen. So let's just fucking let it happen.
Yeah,
then
I just don't think that's the case. I feel like if that was the case, it would have already happened.
Yeah, with the amount of shit that's happened on this fucking earth,
man,
through 2 world wars and what's happened in fucking a massive part of it over the last 3 decades, and where we're at as a fat, disgustingly hateful, spiteful,
fucking
I think
sick, tired.
The test result has already gone bad. So if they were going to pull the pin, I think they've done it already, which means there's a reason that something's happening. If there is any of that layer of control, we're still meant to be here for doing something, so we should be all pushing to find out more, you know? This comes down to everything. It's what we talk about it's why we talk about this shit, is because we want to create that hunger for knowledge, that thirst to know more.
Exactly right.
Instead of just being satisfied with the 4 walls around us.
You want to be able to, we want to be able to create the critical thinking for everybody that's interested in this topic, starting off, because it'd be so easy for me to sit here and go fucking, you spin mercury and apply a fucking 7 hertz fucking electromagnetical wave and it turns to gold and it fucking spins you upside down and puts you in outer space for 6 years. You mean, like, you could make anything up at all. We want to try and really present as many facts and as many critically thought angles as we can to this, and walk you through like somewhat of a timeline,
and then make you hungry for more. Because
exactly right.
Like, again, you know, trying to juggle a full-time job and make sure that we did this episode in a way that brought facts and understanding of the key events, like what we know about Area 51 and what we know about Roswell and what you know about Operation Paperclip. You know, like we've asked you now to send us this stuff or whatever, that's because we can't tackle everything. We can't cover everything. There's only so much time. So the more that you can bring us and the more that you want to learn for yourself, and then you're like, hey, I want to come on. I've been doing fucking 6 months of this research. I want to come on the fucking podcast and tell you about what I've been let's do it, you know?
Can't wait,
That's
bro.
the whole idea. And I guess I know for the key fam that you guys have been hanging out for this episode. Yeah. We hope part 1 has done you justice.
We hope it's just tickled the ballsack of curiosity a little bit when it comes to the non-terrestrials.
Yep. And then we're going to come back and slide our whole fist in.
Oh, yeah. And then at some point, I really want to go into about what a lot of this guy called Corey Good very recently, would have been probably from 2015 to now, I'd say, what he's said about some of the technology, some of the Galactic Federation kind of things. He talks about species living inside of Earth. He talks about Earth being like a honeycomb. So it's like not actually dense. It would be dense in the middle, but like throughout it, it's not like a solid, you know, it's got like pockets and gaps, and there's underground cities, and there's cities in Antarctica, and there's remains in Antarctica, and it ties into fucking Mars, and it ties into when the Earth used to be one big, like a bigger thing, and then it exploded, and now that's why there's like an asteroid belt. And bro, there's so much to it, we can't really give it to everybody all at once. So this conspiratorium...
Welcome to part 72 of fucking UFO.
And by that point, people are going to be like, fuck, they started at fucking Area 51 and now they're talking about fucking...
Area 720.
Yeah. We didn't mention S4, or is that more of like a Lazar
That's
thing?
the Lazar thing.
Cool.
We'll get into that.
Killer. All right, well, let's wrap it up here.
Thank you for a fantastic part 1.
Thank you very much, brother. We'll talk to everyone soon.
Peace and love.
Peace out.